Salinas, and this is my final project for IDS 3224. The name of my final project is Absorption. So, how do liquids affect this absorption of celery stalks? So, what I did, I conducted my experiment over a 5-day span, and so the celery in this experiment absorbed each one of our test liquids. We concluded that over the span of 5 days, each of the liquids traveled through the celery stalks sufficiently. The only reason I didn't do it more than 5 days was because after the end of the first day, the celery stalks were already starting to get color. And the reason I chose to do this project was because I work at an elementary school, and what I had to do with my class was plant in a garden. So I found it very interesting, so I decided to do this project. So I had 2 hypotheses in this experiment, one of them being that I believe that the Sprite would not absorb in the celery stalks, and the other being that the cooking oil will travel through the celery stalks the best. So the materials you need for this experiment is you need celery stalks, vegetable oil, you need Sprite, water, clear cups, food coloring, and a Sharpie to label your cups. So I'm going to break it down. This is the procedure. So first you are going to cut the celery stalks bottoms in a diagonal pattern. So you just cut it diagonally like this. You want to make sure they have leaves on top so you can see if the liquid will travel to the top of the leaves. Okay, then you're gonna get your 3 cups and pour half of each liquid into them. So I have already poured Sprite. So now I am gonna pour water. You wanna make sure it's kind of equal. And then I'll do the vegetable oil. Then, the next thing you want to do is label each cup so you won't get confused. So I'll label this as Sprite. Water. And vegetable oil. Or cooking oil. Then what you're going to do is place the celery stalks in the cups. And then what you're going to do is pour a different food coloring in each of the cups. So what I did red for vegetable oil, blue for the Sprite, and green for water. For the vegetable oil, you want to mix it so it can turn red. The reason you have to mix the oil and the red food coloring was because oil doesn't mix very good with other liquids. So then what you're going to do is you're going to get a desk lamp and you're going to place it over. So my desk lamp's in my room, but you're going to place it over, and you have to observe the celery stalks over a 5-day span. You want to make sure you take a picture every day to see the improvement or to see the growth of the celery stalks. So day 1, when I did my experiment, you couldn't see any absorption of the liquid yet since it was barely the first day. The left cup is the Sprite, the middle one is cooking oil, and the right cup is water. So by the second day, the cooking oil had already traveled through the celery stalk, as you can see with the red and on top of the leaves as well. The water had also already traveled through the celery stalk and on top to the leaves, but not as much as the oil. By day 3, the Sprite still hadn't traveled through the celery stalk. The cooking oil continued traveling through the celery stalk as well as the water. Day 4 is, by day 4, the Sprite, slowly but surely, it started to absorb and it started traveling through the celery stalk. It took the longest out of the water and the vegetable oil. So the one that traveled the most was the vegetable oil, the second was the water, and then Sprite. So for my conclusion is, over the period of 5 days, each celery stalk absorbed some of the liquid. The cooking oil was the most to absorb and the Sprite was the least to absorb. Each celery stalk leaves had a lot of color which represented the absorption of the liquid. If more light was provided during the experiment, more liquid would be absorbed. Some modifications that I would have done is probably add more food coloring, just so you can tell. I would add more food coloring because you can see how much more it would absorb the liquid. Another thing I would do to modify my experiment is probably want to add the same amount of liquid, and then maybe I would want to do this outside because so one could see how weather affects absorption. Some questions that you wanted us to answer for this experiment is why I selected this subject. And so the reason I selected this subject is, like I said in the beginning, was because I started planting plants with my kids at school. So this caught my attention. So why did my investigation produce the result I expected? My results were what I expected. So like my hypothesis was that the vegetable oil would absorb the most and that the Sprite wouldn't. So my hypothesis was correct. What was the drawback of my project? There wasn't any drawback of my project simply because I got really good results. What was the new information you collected during the investigation? So after doing some research online, I saw other people doing this experiment, but mostly a lot of people did it with just water. So I did it with Sprite and vegetable oil. And I still ended up getting very good results. So what is the conclusion of my project? The conclusion is that obviously plants need water to survive, and they draw water up from their capillaries. By adding color to the Sprite, the water, and the vegetable oil, that helps me visualize the invisible process better. So this ends. So then I did save my experiment, the results from my first experiment. So these were the results of my experiment. After 5 days, you can see that the vegetable oil definitely absorbed and traveled through the celery stalks. It is really, really red. The water, you can see it mostly traveled through the leaves. As you can tell, they're really green. And the Sprite, it's really, really hard to tell, but you really have to look closely and you can see how the blue traveled onto the leaves. So this concludes my experiment. I hope you enjoy it. And